multi-signature wallets. It's now it's a very fancy term, so everybody's using it nowadays, but it also depends on how it would be implemented. And the basic principle is, of course, you need two keys to access, for example, the Bitcoin, similar to some kind of nuclear missile launcher. So only the president and the defense minister can trigger some kind of nuclear missile. And so just to very quickly repeat what is like a normal Bitcoin transaction. So because in the Bitcoin network, you never send Bitcoins. You always have, let's say, unspent outputs. Those are collected. You are creating some kind of transaction draft. And then the previous outputs are now used as input for the next transaction. And then with a single private key, this transaction is saved. And the one who has control over the private key can sign this transaction and can spend the Bitcoins in your name. And only then it's broadcasted to the Bitcoin network, and once it's broadcasted, everything is automated because the blocks are confirmed and there's no way to ever can stop it. But this, of course, always is a critical part because this one single private key can unlock the whole funds. And usually the service provider is holding this single private key, and they have full control over the Bitcoins. And if this key gets lost or stolen, the funds are gone. And yeah, as I said, I think 99% of all services have this kind of model. This can be changed with multi-signature addresses. And this works like this. You can create a multi-signature address very simplistically, because it's already part of the basic protocol. So you get basically two or even more Bitcoin addresses, and these will be combined using this basic JSON command. And as a result, you will get a special Bitcoin address starting with a 3. So it's basically a pay-to-script address, so to say. And the resulting Bitcoin address is like fully functional like any other Bitcoin address. The only difference is really that it starts with a 3 instead of a 1. And the interesting part is now you can also create different combinations of these multi-signature addresses. You can, for example, make a 5 out of 10 multi-signature address, which means you need 5 signatures out of 10 to release the coins. So you can, in theory, distribute 10 keys to 10 different people. Or you can have them create their own keys on their side. And then you need 5 confirmations, or maybe 6, and you need to have a majority. And only then you can really spend Bitcoins. And spending the coins works then like this, so that you again create a transaction draft. And then this resulting transaction data is first signed. Yes, please?
I did look for quite some time for the language which they use for doing more like different contracts and fancy things with signatures, but they disabled quite many features of this their language for generating fancy things.
Sorry, could you say it?
I mean, Bitcoin developers, there is a language using which you can define contracts.
It's really like the basic protocol. This is not any fancy.
Very well.
Actually, they had experimental parts, but they also have. You can still create your own multi-sig transactions if you keep it to a very basic level.
Okay, so
yeah.
Okay.
This definitely works.
Okay.
It's not any fancy implementation. It's really like the basic protocol for CIS-oriented multi-signature. And this, so there's really no technical problem to do this because you just, the only difference really have this 3 address.
Yeah, okay. Because the last time I was looking at a part of the code, they just disabled huge, I don't know, 95% of things.
No. But I think the Bitcoin embassy in Amsterdam, they also now do some multi-signature.
Today we're going to do that. Yeah.
So you can still try if it works, but it definitely should work. And at least yesterday, I still used the multi-signature address, so it should work. Okay, then how do you now spend the coins from there? It's basically some kind of you have to start with a 1 signature. So you sign the resulting transaction data with 1 private key, and then you provide it with the correct details, and then you have some kind of partially signed key, and this partially signed key is then handed over to the next person with the next key, and then the process starts again, and the second person has to sign it, because it has to be at least two. And yeah, then you have basically several parties signing off the transaction, and when enough signatures are accumulated, you can broadcast it to the Bitcoin network, and from there it will be put into the blocks and so on, and yeah, the Bitcoins will actually be moved. Okay, the question is because of course you can implement it in a very different manner as multi-signature. You can, for example, make a multi-signature service where the provider creates simply 3 keys and keeps all 3 by themselves. That's also multi-signature. And also, if you now look into the Bitcoin space, many are doing exactly this. For example, I think Bitstamp also now, after the hack, they now said, yeah, we now have also multi-signature. Yeah. But it's just the technology, but they have just some kind of co-signing thing, that they have like 3 keys and they keep the majority by themselves, or hand it to a third party or whatever. But that's not really like multi-signature to keep control only to the user. It's that's what I'm saying. It's just a marketing word, this multi-signature. But you need to implement it correctly, and when implemented correctly, then you can keep control on the user side. But no one is doing this, even when they're using multi-signature, because they're just creating more keys and keeping more by themselves. And that's not how multi-signature should be used to protect funds, in my opinion. So how can you basically do it in a secure manner? So what you can do, you can create 2 keys. And you have basically a user key, which can be created directly on the user side, so that the service provider never sees this private key from the user. So you can create this directly JavaScript in the user's browser, completely separated, and the user can follow the steps that it's like created on user end side. And then you can have the second key, of course, created from the service provider side. And then, of course, you need to make sure to have the key encrypted. And only, you can also encrypt it directly in the user's browser. And when it's encrypted in the user's browser, you can safely copy it or like give it to the service provider. Because once it's encrypted, you cannot do anything anymore with the key. And then you store both keys on the service provider side. And what happens then is when whatever malicious intruder, and even if it's like the website administrator, the only thing he will see when he breaches the server is he will only see the encrypted private key, and because of the multi-signature setup, he would need both keys to steal the bitcoins. So he has this key, because that's unencrypted, but with this one he cannot do anything. And he needs the second key from the user, and the user can only sign the transaction when it's like copied back to his browser. He has to decrypt it with his password and has to sign the transaction on the user side. And only then he can sign the transaction that the bitcoins can be moved. And in that sense, of course, you can also ask what happens now when the user's computer is compromised, because of course you can also hack the user's computer. And this is why you also, of course, get some kind of 2-factor authentication, because you have the key, and you can make it like this, that this key also requires a second confirmation, not only from signing the key from the user, but also like a 2-factor, like you have to enter SMS key to move the bitcoins, because it's very unlikely that the mobile phone and the computer are compromised at the same time. And then you can be sure only the user has made a payment using this. And otherwise there's no chance to ever move the bitcoins. And for example, some secure solutions are this kind of MePIN, for example, because Google Authenticator is not secure in comparison to what everybody is thinking. Because when you create the 2-factor key on your compromised computer, you get this kind of screen where you can make a screenshot of this 2-factor key, and that's only a semi-2-factor, so you need to set it up on a secure computer, the 2-factor. And when the computer is already hacked and you use Google Authenticator, then the hacker can simply make a screenshot and he also has a 2-factor. And this happens many times on local bitcoins and on other, I think on Bitstamp we also had cases where the 2-factor was set up at a compromised computer and then it's not secure anymore. And in that sense, you need to have something really two-factor when you have to set up the two-factor on the mobile device directly, that the hacker doesn't have access to the key for the two-factor. And like SMS is one way, it's very simple. With an SMS, because SMS you can not simply fake the SIM card.
You could fake the GSM traffic data though. That is a possibility, but I mean,
Can you I'm not sure. I never heard of something like that you can. So if you know the phone number from the person, you can fake and receive.
Yeah, you can set up actually a fake base station.
Yeah, but you need to be physically present next to him. Let's say to
at least a few kilometers, like not more than a kilometer apart, I think.
Yeah, or it depends on your size of the antenna, but
Yeah.
right.
Okay, but then still he needs to hack his computer at the same time and hack his phone, and I think it's very unlikely. And
You have to make a real target out of it. Yeah.
yes, you have to make a real target out of him. And then of course you still have one last problem, because even when they are whatever super secure, some kind of multi-signature, whatever wallet, you still have a huge problem. The service can simply go offline overnight.
Yeah.
And then what? I mean, you have super secure multi-signature, whatever, blah blah, and still the service goes offline. But again, with multi-signature, in this kind of 2 out of 2 setup, you can really make it already so secure that you get your coins back when the service goes completely offline. And this works because if you have the 2 keys here, this site can already pre-sign the transaction to some kind of backup wallet. So you can define a backup wallet, for example on your mobile phone, which is outside of the website. And this site can automatically pre-sign a transaction which covers the full amount back to your offline wallet.
But even that, I think, is not even required, because if you are sending one of your own keys to the server, encrypted, then you already have that key somewhere, right? And you can store that.
The problem is you need 2 keys to release the transaction. So
Right,
of course,
right. I mean,
so of course, when the website goes offline, you don't have access to this key anymore.
unless you have saved it somewhere
Yeah,
else.
but you don't have access. It's on web server and so on. So, but this is why you have you can make it with a pre-signed transaction. So every time your balance changes, the service provider can automatically, publicly, let's say, pre-sign this kind of backup transaction, which includes some kind of transaction signed by both keys already, and he just sends you the transaction via email, this pre-signed transaction. And then you only need to redeem it. Because the question is, why can a hacker not steal it? Because it's of course pre-signed, but it's pre-signed to go in one address. So even if a hacker would steal this email, he can only trigger this kind of redemption, but he cannot take the coins to another address. Yes?
Can you just explain that a bit more? Because so every time you make you use your money on this exchange, after that's finished, they will what, put your money in escrow for a certain amount of time, and if something happens, then after a certain amount of time you can. What exactly? I'm curious what you mean exactly. A pre-signed transaction. What you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the multi-signature works like this. You need to sign with 2 keys. So you need the service provider needs to sign and the user needs to sign.
Yeah.
And then of course you can immediately when you have a balance update, so like you have 10 bitcoins and your balance changes to 9 bitcoins, then the service provider can immediately sign his side to this kind of backup wallet. And then he just sends by email the user key in encrypted form and this pre-signed part of his transaction. And then of course it's not so simple, because you need some kind of tool to redeem this backup transaction. But you can find this open source, and I think Green Address IT, for example, they have the same.
But of course, in the case of an emergency, then the company can communicate and say, okay guys, we can't do anything, you can get your money back by doing this and this and this, and people can still get it back themselves.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yes, so you don't need the service provider to get your coins back. And in this kind of mount box, the website went offline, and then of course you are always dependent, hey please, when will you be open again, I can log in, and but with this kind of model, and even, for example, you get immediately after the balance update, you get your email. And for example, if this email is missing, you know already something's wrong. And because you know already in advance that you have this backup transaction, so you don't have to trust anymore that in the future it will go offline, or if it's to be online, because you can always, you have this backup transaction already, and you can choose whenever time to redeem it. So you just have to sign it with your encrypted private key on your side, and then send it to the Bitcoin network, and then you get your Bitcoins back, even when the website is completely offline. And it's only you who can redeem this transaction, because you're the only one with a password. Because even whatever, when the exchange whatever wants to redeem the Bitcoin somehow, it doesn't work, because you need the user key. Because it's only partially signed from the exchange provider. And in that sense, it's more or less a bulletproof system. So you are secure from all kinds of attacks or thefts or whatever. And because, first of all, the service provider never gets access ever to your coins. The only possibility is really to change the whole website code. Of course, I mean, you still need to have so much trust that the website code doesn't change. But even this can be prevented with some kind of checksum. So you can have the whole code fixed, and then you just hash it, and when there's a change in the website code, the hash value will change, and you can easily see, you can have the website evaluated by some expert and say this is really how it works. And once this hash value is fixed, that's basically where you can trust the website is still working the way as it was designed, and there was no change in the website code, and they're not intercepting the password or whatever. And that's basically, in my opinion, how Bitcoin was really used for, because then you're not dependent on the service provider anymore for the trust issues. And so Bitalo, we have basically now this kind of site up and running with this kind of wallet, so you can have this backup transactions and so on. And the good thing is, so we have now some kind of free API, so everybody can, in principle, develop his own service based exactly on this technology for free. So we just want to really improve the Bitcoin world, because still so far 99% are still using this kind of old model, and even when it's multi-signature, they all take control. And because I also had recently a discussion with one exchange, Yakuna, in Germany, and they also make a big advertisement. We have multi-signature, but they simply have 3 keys, and the user gets 1. And it doesn't make any sense. And so in that sense, of course, the problem of getting control over Bitcoin is solved. And I'm not sure if I still have time. But the bottom line is basically it is possible to create a really like zero trust Bitcoin service. And even when it's not like very well distributed so far, because everybody's not following this principle. But when you have Bitcoin as a decentralized currency, I mean, you need also these kind of services where the user keeps full control over the coins, in my opinion. And the good thing is also it's super user-friendly in that sense, because the user doesn't have to take care about multi-signature. Everything is done by the website. And so you don't have to create keys. Everything is done already during the sign-up. And it's so secure, even when your computer is fully hacked, the hacker has full control over your computer, you can still just use this online wallet, because you don't have any problem. Like even when the hacker knows your password, because it's really mandatory to use 2-factor via SMS or via a mobile app or something, you can choose several options. And in that sense, even when whatever the whole server room is burned down by a fire, there is no need for any backup, because it's automatically with this backup transaction. As long as you have still your backup key, there's basically nothing that can happen to your coins. And yeah, that's basically it. And I can still, maybe if I have still 5 minutes or so, I can still explain how the escrow then would work. Because of course, the problem is of course then, when there's a trade going on between parties, of course you cannot force the person who has the coins in his wallet to release them. So when there's a trade going on, And this is why when there is, let's say, coins during a trade, for example, the person has to agree for some kind of escrow transaction. And this can be done via a timed transaction, which means when buyer and seller agree about the kind of release of coins, everything is perfectly fine. But there's also a timed transaction which goes to the service provider, only for the escrow. So only for the small amount which goes into escrow. And then when buyer and seller agree, within 2 weeks, it's perfectly okay. They can just release a coin. There's no way ever the escrow provider can take control. It's only when there's a dispute and the seller does not release the coins, for example, because the buyer didn't buy or didn't pay or whatever, only then, after 2 weeks, the escrow provider can redeem this kind of escrow transaction and take control over the coins and team up with the buyer or the seller to hand them over to the party who's right. And in that sense, I think it's like the lowest level of trust you can get for some kind of centralized website. And if you have any questions, yeah, I'm still here for the whole day. Thank you.
I have one question, because this is a really interesting way to handle the wallets. But how can Bitelo, it's a company, right? So how can Bitelo be a company and do this? Because this is not like huge profit models because you don't take control.
Yes, the wallet is perfectly free, but of course for the escrow you can potentially have fees. At the moment we don't have implement any fees, so at the moment it's really like still more or less in some kind of beta phase. But also our business model in the future will be, because we are now developing all this kind of decentralized services, because you can use this technology for all kind of other stuff. And this is also, I think we will launch. Yes, so we will now launch, for example, that's also why we are cooperating with you for the Internet of Coins and so on. So the kind of business model is not with the wallet. The wallet is just with a secure environment, and that's perfectly free, and it should be free. So I don't want to charge anyone for storing coin securely. It's not any business model. But based on this, you can do all this kind of decentralized services, which I had in the first part of the presentation. So you can do this with a decentralized marketplace where people are trading amongst each other. We will launch in February, we will launch some kind of Airbnb travel module, because then you also have this guarantee that no one can scam each other. And also I think last conference we have some kind of price prediction module. So we have all kind of, because Bitelo